everybody. Welcome in to Load the Box. I am your host, Jordan Hawthorne. I am joined, as always, by Jack Day. Really quickly, before I pass it over to Jack, because we have a lot to talk about, I'll try and speed through all of this, semantics and stuff. Follow me on Twitter at jhawthorne16. Follow Jay, he's over there. Jack on Twitter at Jack_H_Day. And then go give the show a follow at LTB Vikings. One more time, that is at LTB Vikings. Funnily enough, it's scrolling right there on the bottom of the screen right now. So just go to Twitter, look us up, and give us a follow or subscribe if you haven't. Also make sure follow the Facebook and subscribe to the YouTube. Smash the like button, all that jazz. But now that all that's out of the way and we don't have to worry about that for the rest of the show, Jack, we've got a busy one tonight. We've got a football game to talk about, and we've got a bunch of roster moves. How's your week been, man? How's Jack been?
It has been busy. I've been busy with work, been busy with Vikings coverage, obviously. It's been a hectic yesterday was hectic with the initial, whatever you want to call it, the 53-man roster, before the 53-man roster, whatever we're calling it. It was busy yesterday, stayed busy today. I anticipate the next week and a half, it's going to be even more busy. There's a real football game coming up. The Gophers open up their season tomorrow night at home against, I know you're not a fan of them, but some of your followers might be, in the Ohio State Buckeyes. That should be a fun and entertaining game. Don't have super high hopes for the Gophers, but they do have it sounds like there's a lot of returning seniors on the team. So I think they could make it an interesting game, but I just don't see them hanging in there with Ohio State. But a lot of fun and exciting football talk to be had around the state of Minnesota, and I'm looking forward to diving deeper into, like you said, the fake 53-man roster release.
Yeah, I decided to change, or not change, but to make the name for this week's show that this 53-man roster, the official one that got tweeted out and everybody was talking about, it's fake. It's not real. They've already started proving that the cuts they made yesterday don't mean absolutely anything at all, because as soon as the 53-man roster was set, they put 3 guys on injured reserve. They bring back Everson Griffin. They sign. There's one more person that they signed. What was it at? Ben Elfson. They claim him off of waivers. Like, they're still making a ton of moves. There's a lot of moves that I believe are still going to be made. Maybe Cam Newton. I doubt Cam Newton's not coming to the Vikings. Get that thought out of your head. But yeah, man. I mean, we have a lot of cuts to talk about. But before we get into the cuts, I do want to briefly go over the preseason game that was, I think, last Friday evening. I watched it. And I will now, going into week 1, I'm going to voice my concerns just very quickly. Do you think Zimmer is going to make the new offensive coordinator, Kubiak, do you think he's going to make him run the ball, and like he's going to take advantage of him, never have called plays and never have, done this at this level? Do you think that the conservativeness that I saw this preseason was just don't show your hand too much, or do you think that's the offense, not too many deep shots, a lot of ground and pound with very limited stuff? Or do you think it's just because of injuries and stuff like that? What's your take on that?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think Zimmer said this week that there are going to be more 3 wide receiver sets with the Irv Smith Jr. news, which is very unfortunate for the team. We'll get into that a little bit later. But if they're going to have more 3 wide receiver sets, I anticipate that means they will be passing more. I don't think Zimmer, I know he's known as this hard-headed, defensive-minded coach that wants to smash the ball down your throat. That's still who Mike Zimmer is. That's what he wants the identity of this football team to be. But I think he also has to take that with a grain of salt this year, because he knows if this season goes south, he is on the hot seat. Mike Zimmer knows that. You can tell that he knows that by what he did to his defense. He completely rebuilt his defense. And I'm sitting here right now. I know you just said you're worried. I'm sitting on the other side of the spectrum. I've been scrolling through Twitter nonstop. Twitter has been my second home for the last 48 hours. And it's constant negativity from what I've seen on Vikings Twitter. And I'm not there yet. I think we just saw, the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes had a long touchdown to Tyreek Hill. It's the best quarterback to one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. Bashaud Breeland, that's a tendency of his. He's a good cornerback, but yes, he can get burnt at times. And he got burnt by one of the fastest guys to play in the NFL. I'm not concerned. It was another topic of concern that everyone's bringing up is, hey, it's the ones that were out there on the defense and they just look like trash. No, that was not the first team defense. They didn't have Eric Kendricks. They didn't have Anthony Barr. They didn't have Harrison Smith. They didn't have Patrick Peterson. And they didn't, I just said 4 guys. I didn't even name the most important player on the defense side of the ball, and Danielle Hunter. They did not have their superstars out there. They haven't had Justin Jefferson or Delvin Cook out on the field, or they didn't have Adam Thielen either. I know he's played a little bit this preseason before he had that weird where Kirk probably shouldn't have thrown that ball in the preseason where Thielen was running a slant across the middle and he could have gotten the lights knocked out of him. But thankfully the guy that hit him kind of pulled back a little bit. But I'm sitting here, they have a week 1 game. And I said this last week, I think too, the week 1 game against Cincinnati. If they go in and they fall flat on their face against the Bengals, we'll know that the season's in trouble. I cannot get to that point, even thinking that the season's in trouble after watching 3 preseason games. I don't think it'd be fair to say, I think it's just the Vikings fan base in general. If the Vikings were 3-0 right now, like Mike Zimmer typically has been in his past coaching in the preseason, people wouldn't be jumping up and down saying, oh my God, this team's going 20-0 and winning the Super Bowl. They would be saying, hey, let's take it with a grain of salt. It's preseason. We have to do the same exact thing, even though they went 0-3. The offense looks sloppy. They're going to get that stuff figured out, and I'm not too worried about it. The one last kind of final note that I wanted to talk about from the Kansas City game was the amount of improvement we saw out of Kellen Mond from the first preseason game to the final preseason game. I know he was going up against the 2s, 3s, and 4s of Kansas City. He did throw an interception that, albeit probably was Zach Davidson's fault, in my opinion. He's a 6'7" tight end that ran like a 4.5, and he was so flat-footed on that play. I think you probably couldn't have slid a piece of paper underneath his feet when that happened. That play bothered me if you couldn't tell. But Kellen Mond looked good. AJ Rose cleared waivers. He's back on the practice squad as well. I know he was kind of the preseason hero for the Vikings, but all in all, I'm not super concerned yet, and I won't get to that point unless the Vikings fall flat on their face against the Bengals in week 1.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at this point. Is it really is, and I think I made the joke last week on the show about, it's all speculation, and I'm gonna say I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's the catchphrase to this show right now, because truthfully, I don't know what to expect out of this team. The secondary has a lot of question marks for me, even though I'm optimistic about it. The offensive line, a lot of question marks, even though I'm kind of optimistic about it. Everything is like, I'm optimistic, but speaking of optimism, Tom Day is in the chat saying, Optimistic Jack, welcome back. Tom, you must not have been tuning in, because Optimistic Jack had someone did CPR on him. He got taken great care of at some medical facility, and he's been revived and he's back and better than ever. Chris Paxidis also with 2 chats saying he would rather see the Gophers go over Ohio State because he is a Michigan fan, and also talking about if the Vikings pass rush can get home to Joe Burrow, we should win that game hands down, and I agree with that sentiment. But we'll talk more about the Vikings-Bengals matchup next week on the show, as next week is like regular season week 1 for Load the Box, whereas this is still kind of preseason tidying up and all that. So sticking on the Kansas City game for just 1 second, I'm not the type of person, I don't care that we're 0-3 in the preseason. I don't care that we were losing games. That is what it is. You just want to see positivity. To let myself sleep at night, I'm telling myself, okay, we probably weren't running the offense that we're going to show in week 1 because Jefferson and Thielen weren't out there. Cousins was I don't think he played at all in week 1, and then he played a couple of drives in weeks 2 and 3, but he was throwing to guys like Chad Beebe, who we'll talk about later. Emil Smith-Marset, who I like, but he's still very, raw as a wide receiver. So I'm hoping that's kind of what it was, as well as kind of like a why show our hand. We have this guy in Kubiak who hasn't called plays before. Let's let him go and kind of get that done. Nathan Nickel, thank you. I did shave my head. I got impulsive and decided to hack off my long hair. Anyway, let's move on because this is what the bulk of this show is going to be. If you have any final thoughts on the Chiefs, get those out first. But I do want to start with the Vikings' final 53-man roster and kind of waving my, hey, I said it. I've been calling it. Amir Abdullah was going to be the guy who I was like, I'd be shocked if he got cut, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like, if I was in control of the team, he was my practice squad or, just get him off the team guy, because I think that running back room was too filled up or too filled. Too many guys back there. You can't feed all of them. And then also I wanted to see Emil Smith-Marset in the return game. They haven't announced like Emil Smith-Marset is going to be the punt returner and the kick returner, but it looks like it might be leaning that way as he is now a member of the Minnesota Vikings practice squad. Jack, who was the shock cut for you besides Everson Griffin, who is already back with the team now, so we can't count him? What shocked you the most about yesterday's 53-man roster cuts, and what kind of your outlook on it?
Yeah, there wasn't a ton that honestly shocked me. I think Abdullah was one, and I still honestly wouldn't be shocked. I thought I saw that Abdullah, and you can look this up if you're looking stuff up right now, but I thought I saw Abdullah was on the practice squad. I could be wrong on
he made
that.
the practice squad.
So I with Nwangu being put on the IR, I could very much see him being on this roster week one. Like you said, like I've said, this 53-man roster is going to fluctuate several times still before that week one game in Cincinnati. But I think the biggest one in the biggest area of concern that I got some shade thrown at me, this was the weirdest thing. It was the Everson Griffin stuff, the Everson Griffin cut. I tweeted something out after all the big time beat reporters tweeted something out, essentially saying, I checked in with the source earlier this week, and I asked if there's going to be any surprise cuts, and Everson Griffin's name was a name that did get brought up. But I also said I fully anticipate, or it seemed as if it were likely that he would be back on the 53-man roster, which it was announced like probably 20 minutes ago that he is back on the 53-man roster. And someone was like, there's no way that he's going to cut him. And they deleted their tweet literally like 30 seconds after that, which I thought was funny. But I still think, even though I knew it was coming, it was still kind of weird to just hear that after they signed him literally like a week prior. It was like they signed their 10-year veteran, whatever it was, however long he was in Minnesota prior to the whole Dallas and Detroit, whatever you want to call that last year. But that was still shocking to me. Other than that, I don't think there was a ton. I know Hercules Mataafa, Kenny Willix, they both had good preseasons, and they were both two guys that got listed. But I think that's more of just, like you said with the running backs room, it's just a matter of the defensive line room being absolutely crowded, which is a good thing for the Vikings this year. It was not like that last year. There was no pass rush last year out of that defensive line. And we saw some of these younger guys starting to get after second and third stringers in the preseason. But I'm excited to see the big dogs eat in week one. I'm excited to see the Danielle Hunters out there, the Michael Pierces, Delvin Tomlinson, whoever starts opposite of Danielle Hunter. I think DJ Wanham is the slight favorite as of now from what I've heard, but I'm just excited to see what that defense looks like. Zach Davidson sounds like he was cut and was potentially going to be on the practice squad. Not officially on the practice squad, I don't think.
I think I saw that he did make it to the practice squad.
He was on there, but then like they announced that I don't know. There was that was like a weird ordeal. I think Chris Thomason of the Pioneer Press tweeted something about that. If you want to see more about that, but other than that, I don't think there was a whole lot of shocking news. The AJ Rose one, I know a lot of people on Vikings Twitter were bummed about that. But like you said, the running back room, if Amir Abdullah is getting cut, AJ Rose is going to get cut because it's just too crowded of a room. Glad to see he made it on the practice squad. And maybe if Amir Abdullah comes back up or if someone else gets banged up, maybe the Vikings see AJ Rose in a regular season game this year. But other than that, not a lot of shocking things. I think Chad Beebe getting cut would have been a little bit surprising, but given the injury, it kind of made sense. So it wasn't overly shocking, but I think the Vikings got most of these decisions right, and I think they have a good football team heading into Cincinnati here in 11 or 10 days, whatever it is.
It really feels like. So I'm like a big professional wrestling fan. This is like a weird analogy, but like wrestling fans are always talking about like, oh, we wish that like WWE or whoever it is would listen to what the fans want, and it feels like the Vikings are kind of listening to what the fans want. Like. I wish that there was like I really want to like someone to Photoshop a video of like, all the videos of like people at bars watching the Minneapolis Miracle on the huge TV and everyone just goes nuts. I want like that, but on the TV it just says Drew Samia has been cut and then everyone just goes like bizarre because everyone was so excited to see him off the team. And don't get me wrong, like I don't want to see the guy, not have a job or anything. I think he is a competent. I said Drew Samia, and I completely messed up with that. I meant to say Dakota Dojo, Drew Samia as well, but Dakota Dojo not having a job. I think he's a good backup, but at this point, it's kind of like the Vikings should probably move off of him. He was a guy I was kind of surprised to see get cut though, as I did think they would want a veteran backup, interior offensive lineman. And they got rid of Dakota Dojo, who started a lot of games last year, and Drew Samia, who also started a few games last year. So now I think it's official. Ali Udo is starting at guard. There's no question about it. We'll talk more about the tackle position, the left tackle position, a little later, but the chat is incredibly active tonight, so let me just jump over there. Chris Paxitas again saying the 2008 Lions went 4-0 in the preseason. The Vikings got a great look at their second and third stringers, and also talking about how the Vikings offense is obviously going to be better once Jefferson and Thielen and Cook are all playing in the games. I agree with that. Jeff Hawthorne being a troll saying he wants Cam Newton. Tom Day saying without a punter or long snapper, looks like we're going for it on every fourth down situation.
They did. The long snapper's back. I did see that. They've signed him 20 minutes ago as well.
Yeah, so
it's just a punter.
Again, this
Zach Davidson. Hey, Zach Davidson was a punter in college. I wonder if there's any. That's kind of sarcasm.
I saw a couple people making jokes about like the Vikings are thin at tight end. Brian O'Neill played tight end at Pitt before converting to be a tackle. But let's see. Enjoy Sheldon Richardson from Chris Paxitas, and then Jeff Hawthorne has been clamoring for a month now that he wants to see Wyatt Davis play left tackle week 1. And I said, if anything, put Cleveland out there and then throw Davis in at left guard, right guard. But we'll see what happens. We really will. I think there's going to be a lot of mix and matching on that offensive line, which I think we'll talk about a lot more next week, because that's one of my big concerns going into Cincinnati is I think Rashad Hill is the starting left tackle week 1 until Darisaw can get healthy, and Rashad Hill might have to be bad enough that a change has to happen. And just the way Mike Zimmer is, he typically, again, it could be different because this year he's on the hot seat or whatever, but he typically doesn't like to plug a rookie in unless it's like there's an injury or it's desperate. I'm afraid we're not going to see Christian Darisaw until 2 and 5. And then they're going to panic and throw him in there, and he'll look good or something. But going back, I would say that one of the biggest surprises that happened for me with these 53-man cuts, besides the obvious Everson Griffin stuff and the Amir Abdullah stuff, AJ Rose not getting claimed by anybody seemed to surprise me a little bit. I figured someone would pick him up to be, someone has to have, that's thin at running back has to be like, oh yeah, we could use this guy. But no, he ends up making it to the practice squad. And that did kind of surprise me. And then of course, Jake Browning just, bye, so long, farewell. It was fun. You had a good Saturday night practice, but I don't think there was any question Kellen Mond was going to, obviously he was going to make this team. So he's just secured his spot as the number 2. How confident would you be in Kellen Mond having to do a Case Keenum this year?
I wouldn't say I'm confident because he still has a long way to go. He still has to develop. I'm excited about the tools that he brings to the position. He has that mobility. I think he has plenty of strength in that arm to sling the ball downfield. And who knows, maybe you throw him out there and magic does happen, because it seemed as if, I'm not sitting here and saying Case Keenum was even spectacular in that 2017 season. He was good, but he got bailed out frequently because he had very good weapons around him. And that was a weird season. They didn't have Delvin Cook. They didn't have their starting running back that year. And then they lost Sam Bradford too. Case Keenum came out, and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, he bailed Keenum out several times. I'm not saying, like I said, I don't want to sit here and bash Case Keenum, because I know there's people that are probably listening to this, or people that will listen to this, that still get upset if we sit here and say that Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Case Keenum. Don't want to have that argument. I don't have the time to have that argument anymore. But I don't think I'm ready to say that. I think it would be like if the season is a complete throwaway, and say the Sean Mannion stuff is true and Sean Mannion gets claimed, he goes on the practice squad, however that works out, don't put Sean Mannion out there. If you're sitting at 2 and 5 or 2 and 6, put Kellen Mond out there and start the evaluation process now. He would have had another half of a football season to get to that point. If something crazy happens to Kirk Cousins. But I've said this before, I'll say it again. This team is not going to win this year without Kirk Cousins at quarterback. It's just not going to happen. They need Kirk Cousins to stay healthy, avoid the COVID list if they want to win football games. So I'm not ready to say that, as excited as I would be to get to see a chance to see Kellen Mond out there with Jefferson, Cook, Thielen, the newly acquired tight end, Tyler Conklin, whoever's out there, I'd be ecstatic. But that would not be a good sign for the Vikings if that were the case.
Yeah, I want to see him in like a Patrick Mahomes capacity, where like we've already locked up, a seed or something, or we've locked in the playoffs, so we're going to rest Cousins and he plays in like week 18 now because of the schedule change. But I don't know if that's going to happen just because of, it's going to be a competitive season. The pack, there's so many teams in the NFC that are going to be good. And I think every game's going to count for the Minnesota Vikings, whether we're a playoff team or not. I think we will be in it up to the end. I think that we do have a decently high flow of like 8 or 9 wins at least, to where it's like, but anyway, moving on, trying to look at these names to see anybody big that got cut. Shane Zylstra, that was kind of like the Minnesota natives. Well, I think a lot more upset about him being released than I was, because, I'm not one of you guys, I'm down here in Ohio, so he didn't mean as much to me. But then moving on from all the cuts and stuff into some other news, tight end Irv Smith Jr., who was poised for this big breakout season. I was actually about to take him in my fantasy draft on Sunday and decided to hold off, and somebody else ended up taking him. And then 10 minutes after the draft, it comes out he had to have knee surgery. It was going to sideline him for a while. They said they didn't know how long it was going to sideline him until they actually got in there and looked at what needed fixed in his knee. He ends up having to have like a full comprehensive knee surgery. He's expected to miss between 4 and 5 months, which is most of the NFL season. It was a weird situation. It like all the reports and stuff that I was seeing come out about it had me pretty confused. And it was like, how do you not know what's wrong with his knee? But I don't know. I guess maybe they thought it was not as bad as it was. But so he's gone. And then, of course, we trade with the Jets to get Chris Herndon, a player who has been injured and suspended a few times. So his stats don't jump off the page at you, but a talented guy to come in. But it really feels like, to me, this is Tyler Conklin's time to people call him Gronklin. People like to make jokes about him. He has been productive in this offense, but now it went from he was the 3 last year, he was the 3rd tight end, to now he is the number 1, maybe behind Chris Herndon. I doubt it, though. I think Conklin, just because of the familiarity with the playbook, is going to take over number 1. Are you very concerned about this? Is this sound the alarm, the season's going down the drain, or are you okay with the tight end situation?
2 things. I'll get to this. I just made a really weird face when you were talking. I apologize for that. That's because I just saw a tweet from Darren Wolfson saying, like Everson Griffen and the long snapper, the Vikings expect to have Britton Colquitt back on the 53-man roster. I don't know what they're doing. I don't understand it fully, but it sounds like they have their special teams unit intact, which people on Twitter were bringing it up as well. It's not just a punting thing. This is like a rhythm thing that they've had all preseason to kind of get in sync with long snapping, kicking field goals, place holding. It's a big deal. The Vikings have tried to do that in years past, if you don't remember, where they're just juggling around those 3 positions, and then they get to week 1 and it looks like crap. It's happened before. It could have happened again. It sounds like they're all going to be back. As of now, things can change. Obviously, read the title of the show. Nothing's final. Going into the tight end stuff, this is one of the main reasons why I think I was so frustrated on Vikings Twitter, because people are acting like losing Irv Smith Jr. is the end of the season immediately. This is a team, this is an organization that we just talked about. In 2017, we had the Minneapolis Miracle. They didn't have Sam Bradford. They didn't have Dalvin Cook. I think you can make the argument that both of those players are more important than the tight end position. They've seen Adrian Peterson get hurt. They've had Teddy Bridgewater. This team battles through adversity. That's what the Minnesota Vikings have done. They've never gotten and won a Super Bowl, so I can't sit here and till I'm blue in the face and lie to you and be like, hey, they've done this successfully several times, because they haven't. But they're going to figure it out. Irv Smith Jr., I think, and I think this, I think you think this, he was poised for a monster season this year. I will say that. Irv Smith Jr. is going to be very special in this league if he can stay healthy for a long time. Having said that, I think last year he had a total of like 30 catches for like 360 some yards. That number could be off, and 5 touchdowns. You can replace that productivity. Tyler Conklin can come in. Chris Herndon is an athlete that can, like we always say on the show, he can play in between the 20s. I think Tyler Conklin can be that red zone target. Adam Thielen has been a phenomenal red zone target for this team before Kirk Cousins was even the quarterback. So it's way too early to hit the panic button, for me at least. I know there's a lot of people that are hitting the panic button, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Irv Smith Jr. when I say this, because like I said, I think he's a very special talent. But it's not time to sit here and overreact and throw a season away because you just lost a tight end that last year had 360 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. Mike Zimmer said they might go into more 3 wide receiver sets. We could see a D.D. Westbrook start to break out for the Vikings. You could see Amir Smith-Marset as a rookie potentially start to figure it out. And KJ Osborne, he had a nice catch against the Chiefs. I think it was that Kellen Mond was in there. He had a nice toe drag swag play. There's some exciting young wide receiver prospects on this team that I think the Vikings aren't traditionally a team. They like to be in 12 or even 13 personnel at times. That's going to have to change. They've had several instances in the past where they've also had to change and kind of work around roadblocks. This is the same thing. It's not like they lost Kirk Cousins. That's far more important. Losing Delvin Cook, losing Justin Jefferson, that's all a lot more important. I'm going to say it one more time. I'm not trying to take anything away from Irv Smith Jr. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to be very good for a long time. But this Vikings offense the offensive line is still the most worrisome point for me. It's not the tight end room. It's still the offensive line. That does not change. And I think the Vikings are going to figure out a way to be productive on offense without Irv Smith Jr.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I think Herndon will come in, and I don't think he's going to blow the roof off the place or anything. I think Conklin will be fine in the passing game, but I do think, and this is where it's kind of the more nitty-gritty stuff. You know, Kyle Rudolph leaving. Kyle Rudolph was a tremendous blocking tight end. He did get very involved in the run game, and I think that's why he stuck around for as long as he did, because he definitely was not an explosive play threat. He was good in the red zone. He had like niche situations. He was good in the red zone, and he was good, you know, as a leader and in the run game. Conklin, I don't think is the best blocker. I think blocking is so much like, it's just a willingness to get involved and you know, just put your body on the line. If Conklin can step up his blocking game a little bit, he has an outstanding chance to really prove himself, because I do think Conklin in the receiving game, I think he's shown he can be productive. You know, inside the 20s, he's pretty athletic. He's definitely more of the receiving tight end than he is the just down and goody blocking guy like a Klein Salsa was or something. My favorite Viking of all time. So when we say what are we worried about the most, it's not. I agree with you. It's not the tight end room, because Irv Smith went down. Hopefully, Irv Smith does make a full recovery. I haven't seen any Twitter check marks saying anything about it, but a lot of people are speculating. Like, look, they're saying 4 to 5 months. This might be a situation where late in the season, after like 3 months, he might be. If the Vikings are in a good spot, he might be able to try and jump back in a little early, and it's a situation where hopefully he could come back early. I think that's all just fans trying to, you know, will him back, you know, early. They're already looking at like week, you know, like 12 and onward, talking about him coming back. As of right now, we don't have him, I'm assuming, for the entire season. So it's going to be Conklin, it's going to be Chris Herndon, and what's his name? Hang on, let me pull it up, because we just signed him today. Go ahead.
While you're looking that up, I want to make 2 final points on this as well with the tight end room. Irv Smith Jr., I believe this is a contract year for Tyler Conklin. He texted, it was Andrew Kramer, the Star Tribune, tweeted this out. I'm guessing Tyler Conklin potentially had a press conference today that I missed. I didn't see it. But Irv Smith Jr. texted Tyler Conklin and said, go get paid. He's supporting him, which is cool. You want to see that. And I want to make one more note on this because I know Irv Smith Jr. was kind of the talk of training camp. Like he was sticking out. Everyone was saying Irv Smith Jr. is having the best training camp out of this entire team. When I would check in with my source, I would hear that Irv Smith Jr. looked fantastic, but it was always in a pair, and it was paired with Tyler Conklin. It was never him. They said good things about Irv Smith Jr. Everyone was saying good things about Irv Smith Jr. But Tyler Conklin is at a sneaky good training camp as well. I think towards the end of last season, he really started to come into his own a little bit, and he felt more comfortable in this offense. And I know that it's going to be a big drop off, or not. I shouldn't say big drop off. It's going to be a drop off from Irv Smith Jr. to Tyler Conklin, but I think he is more than capable of playing solid football for this team and kind of carrying over that momentum from last year. I know he's been banged up the last couple of weeks, so we haven't been able to see him in the preseason, but I think he's going to get to a level to at least be a solid tight end. And also a potential. It depends on how Herndon comes in here and how quickly he gets things going. But he could be an extremely, extremely sneaky fantasy player in all terms in fantasy football leagues, and mainly in like a daily fantasy type league in the early weeks of the season.
So I picked Conklin up immediately upon hearing the Irv Smith news, and then I saw a lot of people speculating like David Njoku, so I put in a claim for him, but then I canceled it, and I was like, I'm not going to sign Herndon just because I don't know enough about him. But I kept I have Conklin on my roster for my year long right now. I'm going to say this, and I'm speaking it into the atmosphere, and maybe I'm a homo, and yeah, he won a national championship with LSU. Thaddeus Moss is on the Bengals practice squad right now. He's I don't know. It just seems like it's too perfect. Like, it's like Randy Moss's kid comes into the league, he's banged up and he goes practice squad to practice squad. Why not bring him in to give him a chance instead of the guy that we claimed was Ben Elfson? We waived Jalen Holmes to get him, of course. We bring in this tight end that I haven't heard. Thaddeus Moss, he just seems like he would be a good fit for the Vikings. I'm assuming since Irv Smith Jr. is not going to be using 84, we could go ahead and give him the number. And then, Vikings fans can all break out the Moss jerseys and we have this, really good, really feel good story, even if he's a third or fourth string special team type tight end that comes in. But apparently the Vikings don't. They must not like what they've seen because I think they've had 2 chances to bring him into Minnesota and they haven't done it yet because he was on a practice squad for a long time. So I'm speaking it into existence. I want Thaddeus Moss in Minnesota on the Vikings as the third string tight end or the fourth string tight end. So I guess we'll see if that's a possibility, but I doubt it's going to happen, even though it would just be wonderful. But I'm looking. I really don't want to talk about the Cam Newton stuff because I think there's a 0% chance that Cam Newton even sniffs the Vikings. And again, we talk about oblong balls on this show. We don't talk about politics and vaccines and stuff. But Mike Zimmer's already furious that Cousins has not gotten the vaccine. He's not going to bring in Cam Newton, who is also unvaccinated, to come in here for any reason. So I don't know why Vikings fans always speculate about Cam Newton. I guess because he was really good a few years ago.
Well, it's not just Cam Newton. It's any single player that is released, waived, cut, whatever you want to call it. There's someone in Vikings Twitter instantly has to quote tweet it and say, I emoji at Vikings.
Well, the Cam Newton ones don't make sense to me. I've seen so many Photoshops of Cam Newton, in a Vikings, and it's why would we do that? Stylistically, he's the complete opposite of Cousins. I don't know. I've never been a Cam Newton guy. I wish him all the best. I don't dislike him as a person. I like the funny fonts that he uses on Twitter and stuff. But I've just never been a fan of his game just because him, like Lamar Jackson, I always say, they're a quarterback with a running back's shelf life. They're going to be out of the league in 7-8 years. Or at least they're going to be backups because they just can't maintain that level of physicality. But whatever, this isn't a Ravens show, even though there is a Ravens nutcracker behind me right now in the back row. But I'm trying to think of any other news we need to cover. I can't think of anything. What do you have that you would like to talk about?
I think we've covered all my bullet points at least. But again, I said this to you before we hopped in the show. I was like, I guarantee we're going to miss something just because of the fact that in the last 48 hours, it seems like there's been like 55 different pieces of news around this team. It's been hectic. It's been fun. And I'm really looking forward to getting into the regular season, not talking about preseason games, not talking about speculation, not talking about 53-man rosters, but talking about actual football games that are played on a Sunday. And we're getting towards that time of year. I sent out a tweet this morning saying the Gophers play tomorrow, the Vikings play in 11 days. It's fantasy football season. It's the best time of the year. That's all I have to say. I'm pumped, and I know you're very excited as well.
I definitely am very excited. I will say the two news, Dan Chisena and Kene Nwangu, they got placed on the injured reserve, which we were talking either before the show or during the countdown to the show. Either way, before we went, like, our faces were on screen. We were talking about how there is still that, like, there's like the 3-week injured reserve versus like the 8-week injured reserve now. They kept that from last season, which I didn't know that they did. I thought that was a 1-year thing because of the COVID and everything. So teams could, like, if someone got it, they could hide them away and not have to cut them or waste a spot on them. So that's still a thing. So no Kene Nwangu in week 1, and Dan Chisena will not be stealing anybody's house for the first like month either.
I will say he was a surprise, not cut, but a surprise make of the team.
Yes.
Just saying, I was not expecting that. I think the BB news might have something to do with that. I know they like his special teams ability. He can fly. And just kind of jumping back to the IR stuff, there is some positive injury news, or stuff you can take with a grain of salt. With sending those players to the IR, I know they still probably could send more people to the IR, obviously, down the road. But Anthony Barr and Christian Darrisaw were not placed on the IR, which makes me wonder. I thought I read somewhere, I think it was Courtney Cronin said, according to her sources, that there still is like a 50-50 chance on Barr playing in Cincinnati, which is huge for that defense. I don't think you necessarily need to rush him back in that game because I think they're going to be able to get after and get in the head of Joe Burrow without Anthony Barr. But that Darrisaw news is one that is worth keeping an eye on every single day, because I think the plan was, when you draft someone in the first round, the plan was to have Christian Darrisaw as the starting left tackle. It's a good thing they've had Rashad Hill on this roster for the last several years, a good swing tackle that can play that spot. But at the same time, the best Vikings team this year probably has Christian Darrisaw playing left tackle, and they need to get him out in the practice field first because they need to get those reps in, make sure he's ready to go, make sure he knows the offense, and then maybe – I'm saying maybe because I can never say anything certain with this offensive line, but maybe there will finally be some continuity on that offensive line and something we can look forward to for years to come with the amount of homegrown and young talent they have at that spot, rather than talking about Drew Samia or another 4th-round pick down the road replacing someone like Dakota Dozier.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, and this is my hot take to end the episode, and then next week it's regular season football. We'll be talking about the Vikings-Bengals matchup, and then the following day we'll be watching real life football as the Cowboys take on the Chiefs. Is that what the game is? No, it's the Cowboys and the Bucks.
Yeah.
As the Cowboys take on the Bucks next Thursday night. My hot take is it's on that offensive line, which, by the way, Jeff Hawthorne was trying to get me to not talk about Thaddeus Moss, and then also says one hit, Cam Newton might be getting a call. Yes, Jeff, that's always the case, but also I doubt that we're going to bring in Cam Newton to run the offense midway through the season, but we'll see. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And Tom Day is apparently exciting about our kicking team staying the same. I think a lot of fans would disagree with you there, Tom. But anyway, that's the last of the chats for the evening. My hot take that I'm giving to end the show is just like, I think the ideal offensive line for me is Darrisaw, Cleveland. It's in this order, going left to right. Darrisaw, Cleveland, Wyatt Davis at center, and then Ali Udoh and Brian O'Neill. And I think that would just be the money one. I think that's the one that just dominates and eat people's lunches. And because I've said that, every player on that offensive line is going to be terrible now, because I banged on the table for Drew Samia for like a year. It felt like, and he was terrible. He was so bad. He was absolutely awful. But that's all I have. One more time, make sure that you follow the show at LTB Vikings on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Follow the Facebook page. Give us a big thumbs up. Follow me at jhawthorne16. Follow Jack at Jack_H_day. And everybody have a nice, week. Like Jack said, a lot of college football to get you amped up and excited, because we're almost in single digits until the Vikings play a meaningful football game. So Jack, I'll let you get us out of here, man.
Yeah, we're getting very close. Like I said, I think it's 11 days now until we get to that regular season. And I'm sitting here thinking about that time. It seems like it's been forever since we've talked about meaningful football, because the Vikings were struggling towards the end of last season as well. They weren't a great football team last season. And I think you and I have expectations that it's not going to be similar to last year. I know there's some thin areas of depth, but if the Vikings can stay healthy, I'm fully expecting a special season. And I was sitting here working today, kind of daydreaming, not about week 1 or week 2, but about week 3 when the Vikings get back in US Bank Stadium. I can't wait to see a full school chant again. I think the entire state of Minnesota, Vikings fans across the nation, are going to get the chills the first time they get to see that. And it's not even going to be that. I guess in Cincinnati, I'm probably going to get the chills too, just because there's fans. And that's how football is meant to be played. I was thinking this today. I didn't say it out loud because I had no one to talk to. I work at home and I'm alone. I don't know what I was just going to say there. But I think that US Bank Stadium in week 3, I think there's the potential of hearing that stadium louder, not louder than the Minneapolis Miracle, but I think it could get close. I was thinking there was 2 instances where I've been in that stadium where it was deafening, and I had to bring this up. I didn't even realize where I was going with this, but now it transitions perfectly because we can end this show on a very positive note for all Vikings fans. The Minneapolis Miracle is the loudest I've ever heard that stadium. The second loudest I've ever heard that stadium was a rather meaningless game, also against Cincinnati in that same season where they were blowing out the Bengals. I believe it was Mike Zimmer's first time playing against the Bengals as a head coach. They blew them out, and I have a very vivid memory of Case Keenum jumping up on the bench, getting everyone wound up and ready to go because Teddy Bridgewater had recovered and overcome that devastating knee injury. And now he's back starting for the Denver Broncos, which we didn't bring up today, which you got it. I don't care what your opinions are about Teddy Bridgewater, the quarterback, but Teddy Bridgewater, the person, deserved that chance. And I am pumped to see him in that team or in that organization. It's a very similar situation to what they had in Minnesota. It's supposed to be a good defense. They have Pat Shurmur running the show as the offensive coordinator. He's surrounded with weapons. Very good weapons too. I wouldn't say they're as good as the Vikings now, but I like Noah Fant. I like Jerry Jeudy. Cortland Sutton's coming off of an injury from last year where he didn't play. People are kind of forgetting about him. I'm excited to see Teddy Bridgewater get another chance. I know you are. I think we both have a very soft spot for Teddy Bridgewater on this show.
Absolutely.
I'm excited for that. I think like I said, that was one of the worst days in my short 26-year life of being a Vikings fan, getting that notification that Teddy Bridgewater was. I mean, I think one of the main things I got from Bleacher, ESPN, whoever I got the notification from, was talking about how the players were crying and getting sick because of how gruesome it was. It was awful, and I'm just pumped to see Teddy get that chance again. So after going into my Teddy Bridgewater, I had to bring it up. I couldn't go without saying that, but I'm, like I said, I'm ecstatic for normal football to be back, meaningful football. It starts tomorrow with the Minnesota Gophers playing the Ohio State. God, I hate that I say that. I hate when players do that. But the Ohio State University is in town, and I think it's going to be an entertaining game. Don't know if the Gophers come out on top, but then we have, starting tomorrow, it'll be 10 days until the Vikings regular season kicks off in Cincinnati. It's going to be entertaining. Make sure to join us next week. It'll be the first full show of us kind of getting back into the swing of things, handing out game balls, doing all of the typical load the box stuff. Make sure you swing by, keep it interactive. It was fun tonight having all the comments. Keep it up like that. And most importantly, Skol as always.